What's up, football fans? The NFL draft is just 2 weeks away, and let me tell you, things are starting to get spicy out there. If you're a Bears fan, this might be the most exciting and nerve-wracking pre-draft buzz we've seen in a while. There's a whirlwind of speculation going on, and right at the center of it all, a standout running back from Boise State who's becoming one of the hottest names out there. It's not really shocking if you've been paying attention, but the fact that he continues to gain momentum with league scouts just adds more fuel to the fire. This guy has impressed during the entire offseason circuit, and you can feel that if he's still on the board when the Bears hit the clock with that 10th pick, he's going to be seriously considered. The real question is, will he even make it to pick number 10? A few weeks ago, I might have told you it was a coin toss, 50-50, but now, things are shifting. The vibe has changed. There's a growing sense that one of the teams picking ahead of Chicago might snatch him up. Word is, there's one specific team sitting at pick number 6 that's been doing a lot of homework on him. Now, I'm not saying it's a lock, but it's definitely in play. And hey, don't sleep on the team picking at number 4 either. They've had issues with their running back room lately, and if they feel like this guy can turn things around, they might just take the plunge. And let's be honest, if a team in the top 9 sees a chance to lock in a dependable, explosive weapon, even if running back isn't their top priority, they might just roll the dice. So if you're the Bears front office, sitting there knowing this kid might go anywhere from pick 4 to pick 9, you're probably sweating a bit. Do you trade up? Do you sit tight and hope he falls? It's not an easy call. And just imagine if he does fall past that team at pick 6, everything changes. The odds start leaning more in Chicago's favor. Not just because it gets them closer to 10, but because teams often start rethinking their boards when a guy they assumed would be gone is suddenly still available. According to a bunch of mock drafts floating around right now, this Boise State star is the overwhelming favorite to land in Chicago. It's practically the consensus pick. But as always, there's a twist. Another team, somewhere in the mix between picks 7 and 9, might be plotting a surprise. A report dropped recently suggesting they're at least considering him, maybe as a contingency plan before pulling the trigger on another move. Personally, I think it's possible but not likely. That squad seems more in the market for a quarterback, and if one of the top guys is still available, that's probably the direction they go. They could even pivot to a tight end or a high-ceiling defensive player, especially given their track record of focusing on the D-line in round 1. Now, let's talk Bears strategy. If this running back does fall to 10, you've got to weigh how much of a sure thing he is versus what other options might be on the board. And then there's the rumor that maybe, just maybe, Chicago might be looking at different needs entirely. There's been some talk that they could bypass the running back and instead address the trenches. That's right, we're talking about the defensive line. Here's the angle. Chicago has 2 second-round picks. That gives them some flexibility. If there's a run on edge rushers or defensive tackles, and someone that starts a slide, they could try to trade back into the late first to get their guy. From what I've heard, they're a little more urgent about finding a defensive tackle than they are about an edge rusher. And when you look at the roster right now, that might actually check out. There's a decent number of solid interior guys already in the building, guys who can rotate and hold their own. One of them flashed some real potential late last season. Another was a fairly recent third-rounder, and one of the newer names on the roster has experience playing both inside and outside. So if you're thinking rotation and depth, the Bears are in a better spot at defensive tackle than they are at edge. That edge group? It's thin. Real thin. You got maybe one clear option, maybe another guy who might end up playing mostly on the outside, but after that, it drops off hard. There's one dude who's probably going to get real minutes at edge this year, but whether he can produce consistently is still up in the air. And there's another name who might not even make the final roster. Depth is an issue, and that's putting it lightly. I've got to say, I really like this year's defensive tackle class. There are some real ballers in there, and if the Bears find a right fit at the right spot, that could be a game changer. But looking at this defense, the edge is where they need the most immediate help, at least for this upcoming season. Some folks might argue otherwise, maybe thinking a young player on the roster is ready to step up. I don't think the team is giving up on him. Not at all. He probably would have benefited from staying in college another year, but here we are. This next season might end up being a redshirt year of sorts, with him contributing in a limited rotation. Nobody expected him to come in and rack up double-digit sacks right out of the gate, but at the same time, you're hoping he's more than just a warm body on the sideline. The Bears clearly have some hopes for him, maybe not to be a full-time starter just yet, but to carve out a niche in the rotation. And then there's another player who might move around the line, maybe lining up at end sometimes, maybe bumping inside, depending on the look. That versatility might have been a big reason they brought him in. There's even some chatter about using bigger bodies out on the edge, a tactic we've seen from this coaching staff before. One of the new guys looked like he slimmed down a bit, and maybe that's the plan, have him flexible enough to play both edge and tackle when needed. If the reports are true and the Bears really do see defensive tackle as their biggest need on the line, it makes you wonder what that means for the rest of the group. Maybe someone gets kicked outside. Maybe they keep rotating guys until they find the right mix. One thing's for sure, there are just more capable bodies at defensive tackle right now than at edge. And while I lean toward edge rusher being the bigger need, I get why there's a debate. Honestly, if you ask me which group gives me more confidence heading into the season, I'm taking the tackles. So, yeah, defensive tackles are looking solid, but when it comes to the edge, man, it feels like that's where the Bears need to dial in. That's where the urgency lies, especially for this upcoming season. I know there's some disagreement around the league and in the fan base. He's not expected to come out of nowhere and start throwing down double-digit sack numbers. But if he can flash in limited snaps, that's a win. Still, the Bears are going to need more than that. They need someone who can bring pressure consistently, snap after snap. Another player on the roster might be moved around to help with this, offering some versatility, which is always valuable. That's probably part of why they brought him in. He can fill multiple roles depending on what the defense needs. And look, this coaching staff has already shown they're not afraid to get creative. They've used some pretty big dudes at edge in the past, guys over 300 pounds, and if they think a player can handle the workload on the outside, they'll try it. One of the new guys brought in during the offseason looked like he trimmed down, so maybe the plan is to keep him light enough to flex between edge and tackle. If that's true, it would give them a little more breathing room. But again, they're just more reliable names inside than outside. The edge position is thinner, and the urgency is higher. That's why, even if defensive tackle might seem like the safer pick, I still think edge rusher is the spot they need to prioritize, at least for right now. But it's close. There's a real debate here. No matter where you land, the truth is they just need more impact defenders. Period. Whether it's coming from the inside or the outside, this defense needs juice. And I totally get why some fans feel more confident in the tackle group. It's deeper, it's more proven. But man, the pass rush off the edge is a game changer when you get it right. Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about the offensive side, specifically left tackle. That's been a hot topic too, and with the draft coming up fast, you better believe it's a serious consideration for the Bears. Even though the interior of the offensive line has been rebuilt through trades and free agent signings, the left tackle spot could still be addressed with that 10th pick. The general manager even mentioned it at the owners' meetings. He's thinking about both short-term needs and long-term security. Sure, they might not need a rookie to start at left tackle right away in 2025, but bringing in competition and planning for the future, that's just smart. From my point of view, there are really only two offensive linemen that make sense at pick 10. Will Campbell from LSU and Armin Memu from Missouri. Campbell's been a 3-year starter at left tackle, super steady, and has all the traits you want. Memu's a bit more versatile. He's played right tackle and even some guard, but I honestly believe he's got the tools to flip to the left side if needed. Now, there's some disagreement around the league about both of them. We'll get into that in a sec. But here's the deal. If neither of those two guys is still available at pick 10, I don't see the value in taking another offensive lineman that early. There was a time when Josh Simmons might have been an option, but the injury cloud hanging over him just makes him too risky at that spot. Josh Connerly is another name to watch. He's been rising up boards after a solid Senior Bowl showing. At the end of the college season, he was projected as a second-rounder, but now, some scouts think he sneaks into the first. Still, 10th overall might be a little rich for him. If those top two linemen are gone, I'd honestly look elsewhere. Free agency did enough to patch up the O-line for now, which gives them some flexibility. But if Campbell or Mimieux are there, I'm all for pulling the trigger. Anyone else? Not so much. Speaking of Mimieux, there's been some interesting buzz. The draft chatter is heating up around him, and it's not all consensus. One guy's got the longer arms and is actually shorter, measuring around 6'4". The other is taller, closer to 6'6", which some teams tend to prefer at left tackle. But length can't be ignored, and Mimieux's arm length keeps him in the conversation. A sports radio analyst recently said some teams view him more as a guard than a tackle. Not long ago, the consensus was that he was best suited for right tackle or even guard, but now there's growing belief that he might actually stick at left tackle. The only reason he played on the right side before was because his college team already had a locked-in left tackle, so they didn't want to mess with that. So now the debate is all over the place. Campbell versus Mimieux, tackle versus guard, upside versus readiness. And the truth is, different teams are going to see them in very different ways. Some might love the potential at left tackle. Others might feel safer projecting them inside. The Bears have to figure out where they stand on that, and fast. If they don't believe either guy can hold it down at left tackle, that changes everything. Even if they're the best player available on their board, they got to think about fit and long-term upside. It also raises the question, could Darnell right slide over to left tackle? If so, how does that affect his ability to play right tackle, where he's already made strides? That's a risky move. You don't want to shuffle guys around unless you're sure it'll work. There's also the issue of when these rookies are going to be ready to play. If they're not realistic options to start at left tackle this year, you're basically using a top 10 pick on a future bet. And that's fine if you're confident in the upside. But if not, maybe you look in another direction. Now, let's not forget about Jackson, who's been dealing with some injuries lately. He just got a 1-year extension, so he's still in the plans. But there's no guarantee he's your guy long-term, and that adds even more urgency to getting this pick right. You've got to think a few steps ahead here. As for the rest of the left tackle class, I'm not really sold on anyone else. If Campbell and Mimieux are off the board, I'm out. Maybe someone emerges, maybe a surprise name pops up late, but for now, those are the only two I'm backing at pick 10. Oh, and just before I jumped on here to record, I heard a report that another offensive lineman is set to visit the team next week. Interesting development, but I wouldn't feel great about drafting him at 10. If the Bears somehow trade down, maybe to 21 or something like that, and stockpile some future assets, then sure, take a swing. But at 10, that feels like a reach. He's got size, he's strong, definitely not a scrub, but he's not a blue-chip prospect either. Not in this draft class, which, let's be real, is kind of thin on high-end pass rushers and elite offensive linemen. He's a solid run stopper, but that alone doesn't make him worth a top 10 pick. Trust your board, trust your evaluations, but don't get caught reaching just because the clock's ticking. Whoever ends up calling the shots on draft day have a lot on their plate, and they better get it right. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on our Chicago Bears. And don't be shy. Drop your thoughts on the news in the comments below. In a bold move that's sending shockwaves through the NFL community, the Chicago Bears have reportedly set their sights on none other than Dallas Cowboys defensive dynamo, Micah Parsons. Whispers from league insiders suggest that the Bears front office is quietly orchestrating what could become one of the most sensational trades in recent history. Could the Windy City become the new home for one of football's fiercest pass rushers? Parsons, 24, has been nothing short of extraordinary since entering the league in 2021. A first-round pick out of Penn State, he made an immediate impact, clinching the NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year title and never looking back. Known for his explosive speed, versatility, and relentless drive, he racked up 14 sacks in 2023 and followed it with another dominant 12-sack season in 2024, earning back-to-back Pro Bowl nods and cementing his reputation as a game-changer. The Bears, who have been aggressively rebuilding their defense under head coach Matt Eberflus, see Parsons as the missing piece to reignite their historic monsters of the Midway identity. With a defense-heavy draft strategy and key offseason acquisitions, Chicago appears poised to make a deep playoff run, but the addition of Parsons could elevate them from contenders to legitimate title threats. However, acquiring Parsons won't come cheap. With the Cowboys having picked up his fifth-year option just last year, any potential trade would require a king's ransom, likely involving high draft picks and possibly a premier player. Still, sources close to the situation say Chicago's interest is more than a passing thought. It's an all-in mentality from a franchise hungry to reclaim its former glory. As negotiations heat up behind the scenes, fans across the league are watching with bated breath. If the Bears pull this off, it won't just reshape their defense. It could redefine the balance of power in the NFC. One thing is certain. The Micah Parsons sweepstakes are just beginning, and Chicago is leading the charge. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay updated with exclusive news about our Chicago Bears, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.